connections, always. The other thing I'll say is Palestine is our generation South Africa. And if we don't step up boldly and courageously to end the imperialist project that's called Israel, we're doomed.
Really, Patrisse? End the state of Israel? Really? Is that where we've come from, a supposed social justice warrior calling for genocide and ethnic cleansing? But I'll tell you what really disappoints me here. It's not just what she said, but also the fact that she said it 6 years ago at the Harvard Law School. 6 years ago, her statements were just there, lying on a shelf, and no one cared. They just let it fly by. They looked the other way while she was calling for a destruction of a state, and it was okay by everybody who listened to it and by the Harvard Law School that hosted this atrocious panel. This is insightful, this is disappointing, but more than anything, it's dangerous because of the direction in which it's pointing. The painting behind me is a depiction of the destruction of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem by the Roman legions 2,000 years ago. And there is a very famous story in the Jewish lore in the Talmud that asks the question, why was Jerusalem destroyed? And it depicts a social gathering in Jerusalem during the Roman siege, where the host notices the presence of his arch nemesis in the ballroom. Now, the host does not like that presence, so he makes sure to get the guy out, but he doesn't do it quietly. He does it in his face and in front of everyone else. And the Jewish lore, the Talmud teaches us that the reason Jerusalem was destroyed was not just because this act, but also because of the fact that the leaders of the city were present in that ballroom, and none of them uttered a word in the sight of such injustice. The fact is that nobody sitting in that room at the Harvard Law School panel uttered a word when Patrisse mentioned her disgusting, yes, disgusting comments about ending the Jewish state. Now, this leads me to another issue here, the claim of supposed imperialistic. The state of Israel, the Jewish state, Judea, where the word Jewish comes from, has been inherent and intrinsic to that part of the world, not for a year, not for a decade, not for a century, but for thousands of years. Like I mentioned before, the glorious Jewish temple twice was in Jerusalem. And for thousands of years after the Romans exiled many Jews, there has been continuous Jewish presence in the land of Israel. Nothing changed. There is nothing imperialistic about the Jewish connection to the Holy Land. There is nothing imperialistic about the desire and the yearning of thousands of years where Jews from all over the world prayed and hoped to go back home to Jerusalem. But that kind of ignorance doesn't surprise me. The fact is that people go out there to utter words that relate to Israel and the Palestinians without even realizing what they're saying. Like the other day when people go and hold signs that call Palestine from the river to the sea. And they march in those demonstrations that are depicted by the media as peaceful, with smiley people who are holding these signs. But do you know what that means? When you say from the river to the sea, it means ethnic cleansing of the Jews. It means genocide against the Jewish people. So you can smile all you want when you hold that sign. There is nothing peaceful about making those declarations. It's clear that the mere phrase Free Palestine or River to the Sea has become an issue of fashion without any kind of depth, which leads me to an excellent segment about this exact issue that appeared on Real Time with Bill Maher a couple of months ago with the singer John Legend. Take a look.
I think as progressives, we should also speak up for human rights for Palestinians. And I think for too long, I think it's been out of bounds for progressives to speak up for the rights of Palestinians. And I don't know about Venezuela, so I won't talk about it. But I think it is a progressive point of view to speak up for the human rights of Palestinians.
But how is it the Palestinian issue is in your mind and the Venezuelan issue is not? I mean, that says something about what has happened to progressive politics.
Well, it's the things that get talked about in American media more. Like I just haven't read that much about Venezuela, but you know, Israel and Palestine have been talked about for decades in this country, so we're more educated on it.
So there you have it. It becomes cool to utter words that relate to Israel and the Palestinians, because you hear so much of it on social media or on the news without even realizing the complexity of the issue, without knowing what you're talking about. It just makes you look good to touch upon these issues. And that, my friends, is the core problem that we're facing here. There is lack of modesty in dealing with the issue, because when you don't understand the layers that pertain to it, I'm not asking you to become Golda Meir or sing Hava Nagila with me. All I'm asking is that you acknowledge the fact that this is a complex issue, and you should hold your breath for a minute before you make a stupid comment or an evil one. And lastly, but I think most importantly, if the banner of social justice, any kind of social justice movement or leader, becomes the annihilation of another people or another country on earth, this is a real dangerous direction that humanity is facing. Because if that's where social justice is headed, then, Patrisse, we are really doomed.